My name is Emily Carter, and I never believed in luck. I used to roll my eyes whenever people said, "Your life can change overnight," because mine never did. For 38 years my life was the same routine: work, bills, exhaustion, repeat. I was a single mother, raising my son Ethan, and every day felt like a race I was losing. Sometimes I'd stare at the ceiling late at night and whisper to myself, "Just one break, just once." But life doesn't hand people like me breaks. Or so I thought. It happened on a Thursday, the kind of ordinary day that doesn't warn you it's about to rewrite your life. I'd stopped by the gas station after work, tired, sweaty, and ready to collapse. There was a small lottery stand near the register, and the clerk smiled. "Feeling lucky today," he joked. I almost laughed. Me? Lucky? Still, something in me, maybe boredom, maybe hope, made me buy one ticket. Just one. That night, I tossed it on my kitchen counter and forgot about it. The next morning, with cold coffee in one hand, I checked the numbers while the TV droned in the background. One by one the numbers matched. First I thought I misread them. Then I checked again. And again. My hands went cold. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. $12 million. I had won $12 million. I sat there frozen, staring at that piece of paper. The same hands that once counted every dollar now held more than I'd ever dreamed of. But instead of screaming or calling someone, I did nothing. No one would believe it anyway. And deep down I knew one thing. If anyone found out, my life would never be the same again. So I made a decision right there. In that tiny kitchen with the flickering light above me. No one would know. Not my mom. Not my sister. Not even Ethan. This secret was mine. And mine alone. The first few days after winning felt unreal. Emily still woke up early, poured the same bitter instant coffee, and checked her near-empty bank account, out of habit more than need. The irony almost made her laugh. Just a week ago she couldn't afford a decent coat, now she could buy the entire store. But instead of shopping, she kept the ticket locked inside an old recipe box beneath the sink. Her hands trembled every time she opened it. She wasn't afraid of losing the money. She was afraid of what it might do to everyone around her. Her sister would demand her share. Her father would suddenly remember he had a daughter. And her fiancé Mark, he'd see dollar signs before love. So Emily pretended nothing had changed. She still walked to work at the diner, still forced a smile at rude customers, still counted tips like they mattered. But inside, she was bursting with a secret too heavy for her small, quiet life. That night, as rain tapped against her window, she whispered to herself, "Maybe I'll tell them after Christmas." Yet even as she said it, she knew she wouldn't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Because for the first time in her life, Emily felt something rare: control. But secrets have a way of rotting, and hers had just begun to whisper. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing on the nightstand. It was my brother, Nate. We hadn't spoken properly in months. Not since Dad's health started declining. I hesitated, staring at the screen before answering. "Hey," I said quietly. He sighed. "You okay? Heard about last night." "Yeah, I guess," I whispered. My voice cracked. Still trying to wrap my head around everything. There was a pause. "You think he's serious about selling the company?" I laughed bitterly. When was Dad ever not serious about money? Nate didn't respond. We both knew the truth. Dad cared about control, not family. And losing that control over the company, over us, scared him more than death itself. After hanging up, I sat by the window, watching the morning light filter through the blinds. That business wasn't just a building to me. It was childhood memories. The smell of engine oil. The sound of Dad's voice echoing through the shop. Work harder or go home. That was his motto. And now? He was selling it. Handing it to some stranger like it meant nothing. At breakfast, Mom avoided eye contact. Her hands shook slightly as she buttered her toast. "You should talk to him," she said softly. "He's not well. Maybe he just needs time." Time. That's all we ever gave him. And in return he gave us silence. Later that afternoon I drove down to the warehouse one last time. The place was quieter than I remembered. Dust floated through the sunlight streaming from the roof. I walked past the rows of old tools, the faded photographs on the wall. Dad and us smiling years ago. I placed my hand on one of the machines. Cold metal. Familiar yet distant. You raised me here, I whispered. And now you're erasing it all. But even as I said it, something inside me shifted. A voice, small but certain, told me this wasn't the end. Dad was selling everything fine. But I'd find out why. And when I did, things would never be the same again. For weeks, I carried that lottery ticket like a secret heartbeat in my pocket. Nobody knew. Not my neighbors, not the cashier who sold it, not even the woman I'd once called my best friend. I kept it folded inside an old recipe book, the one my mother had given me before she passed away. Every night I would take it out, stare at the numbers and whisper to myself, this is my way out. But fear has a funny way of dressing up as logic. What if it's a mistake? What if it's not real? What if they take it from me before I can even breathe? So I stayed quiet. I still worked my dull shifts at the diner, smiled at rude customers, wiped tables that didn't belong to me anymore. But deep inside, something was shifting. For the first time in years, I didn't feel trapped, I felt powerful. Nobody controlled me now. Not life, not luck, not even the people who'd once pitied me. When the letter from the lottery commission arrived, my hands trembled so badly I almost tore it open. Congratulations, it began. You are the verified winner of $18 million. I sank to my knees on the kitchen floor, laughing and crying at once. The cheap linoleum felt cool against my face as I whispered, they'll never see this coming. That night I made a plan. I wouldn't tell a soul, not yet. I wanted to see how people treated me when they thought I was still the same broke, invisible woman. I wanted truth before generosity, love before loyalty. So I kept my secret close and watched the world carefully because now, for the first time, the game was mine to play. For weeks I carried my secret like a heartbeat. Quiet, constant, impossible to ignore. Every morning I woke before sunrise, brewed the same bitter coffee, and acted like life hadn't changed. My family still thought I was broke, that I was barely scraping by. But behind the worn curtains of my small apartment, I was learning what power felt like when no one knew you had it. I started testing people in small ways. My sister Martha called one evening, crying about her car payments. I told her I didn't have a cent to spare, just to see what she'd say. She sighed, muttered something about how I'd never been good with money, and hung up. I smiled, it hurt, but it also taught me everything I needed to know. Then came Jake, my nephew, the only one who ever treated me with kindness even when I had nothing. He stopped by with groceries saying, you always took care of us, Aunt Evelyn. It's my turn now. That night I cried harder than I had in years. Maybe, just maybe, he was different. In my journal I wrote, money doesn't change people. It reveals them. I knew I couldn't keep this secret forever. But I wasn't going to announce it like a celebration. When the truth came out, it would be a mirror, and everyone would see exactly who they were. That night, as rain tapped against the window, I stared at the winning ticket locked in my drawer. One decision could change everything, and I was finally ready to make it. A week later, I drove past my old family home, the one my father built with his bare hands. It had been sold years ago, after his death. I slowed the car and stared through the windshield, watching a new family's children run through the yard. Laughter echoed across the lawn, a sound that once belonged to us. I gripped the steering wheel tighter and whispered, you'd be proud, Dad. I finally did something for myself. I parked down the street, hidden under the shade of an oak tree, and opened my notebook. The same one I used to track every dollar I'd ever lost. Now I was tracking something else, the people who mattered. Who stayed. Who didn't. That night my brother Peter called. He'd heard from Martha that I was struggling to pay rent. He offered me a loan, but with interest. I almost laughed. Interest. From family. It was like offering someone a rope but making them pay for every inch. I politely declined and hung up. My hand trembled, not from anger but from clarity. For years I'd been the soft one, the one they could guilt or manipulate. But not anymore. Later I stood before the mirror, studying the lines on my face. Every wrinkle had a story: sacrifice, silence, survival. And now something new: strength. I wasn't the same woman who begged for scraps of kindness. I picked up the phone, dialed a number I hadn't called in years, the local community shelter. I'd like to make a donation, I said. Anonymous. The woman on the line thanked me, unaware that I'd just taken the first step toward rewriting my legacy. Days turned into weeks, and something inside me began to heal. I started waking up early, making coffee just the way my mother used to, strong, slightly bitter, grounding. I'd sit by the window of my small apartment, watching the world move without me. Yet somehow I didn't feel left behind anymore. I was catching up with myself. One morning, I walked into the same grocery store where my brother worked. I hadn't seen him since that awkward phone call. He looked surprised, maybe even guilty, when he spotted me near the bakery aisle. "You look different," he said hesitantly. I smiled. "That's because I am." He tried small talk, pretending things were normal. But I could see the curiosity in his eyes, the silent question he didn't dare ask. "How are you surviving?" I didn't give him the satisfaction of an answer. When I got home, I opened my laptop and stared at the folder labeled Letters Never Sent. Messages I'd written to everyone who'd wronged me but never delivered. One by one I deleted them. Every unsent word felt like a chain snapping loose. That night I looked up at the ceiling and whispered, "Dad, I'm okay now." The tears came not from pain but release. But just when I thought peace had finally found me, a message flashed on my phone screen. It was from an unknown number. "We need to talk. It's about your father's will. You deserve to know the truth." My heart froze. After all these years, I thought I knew everything about him. Turns out the real story was only beginning. The unknown message left me restless all night. I stared at the glowing screen, reading it again and again. "You deserve to know the truth." The words echoed in my head like thunder in a quiet valley. What truth? My father's will had already been settled, or so I thought. By morning, curiosity had turned into a slow-burning anxiety. I finally replied, "Who is this?" No answer. Hours passed. Just when I was about to give up, a new message appeared. "Meet me tomorrow at 10 a.m. The old lawyer's office on Maple Street. Don't tell anyone." It felt strange, almost cinematic, like something out of a story I wasn't ready to live. But a part of me, the part still haunted by unanswered questions, knew I had to go. The next morning, I dressed simply and tied my hair back. My reflection looked calm, but inside my heart was a storm. When I reached the office, the air smelled of dust and old paper. A man in his 60s sat behind the desk, glasses perched on his nose. "Margaret," he said softly, "your father trusted me. Before he passed, he left a letter, one that wasn't part of the official documents." He slid a brown envelope across the table. My fingers trembled as I picked it up. The handwriting was unmistakable, my father's. I unfolded the letter slowly. "If you're reading this, it means the time has come. There are things I couldn't tell you, things that would have put you in danger. But now you must know the truth about what really happened to the family business." My pulse quickened. My father wasn't the man I thought he was, and neither was the life I believed we had built. I sat frozen, staring at my father's handwriting. The words blurred as my eyes filled with tears. He had been gone for years, yet somehow, through this letter, his voice filled the room again. Calm, measured, and haunting. "Margaret, the company wasn't taken from you. It was taken from me first. Someone I trusted more than anyone turned everything upside down." I felt my breath catch. My hand shook as I read the next lines. "You must not trust the people closest to you. One of them already knows about this letter. If they find out you've read it, you could be in danger." Danger? My heart pounded. Who was he talking about? My family? My brother? Someone from the board? The lawyer, Mr. Henson, watched me silently. "Your father was scared in his final days," he said. "He mentioned someone who wanted to erase every trace of his legacy." I folded the letter and gripped it tightly. "Who?" He sighed. "That's not written there. But he asked me to give you one more thing." He opened a drawer and handed me a small black USB drive. He said, "This holds everything, but you'll need courage to see it through." I walked out of that office with my hands trembling, the USB like a live wire in my palm. Outside, the world moved as if nothing had changed. Cars passing, people laughing, but inside me everything had. As I reached my car, a shadow moved behind a lamppost. I turned, my heart thudding. Nothing. But I knew what I felt. Someone was watching me. When I got home that night, I locked every door and sat staring at the USB drive. It looked harmless, just a small piece of plastic and metal, but it carried the weight of everything my father left behind. I plugged it into my laptop. A folder appeared with one file named Simply Truth. My fingers hesitated before clicking. The screen filled with scanned documents, contracts, bank transfers, hidden accounts, and then photos. Photos of people I knew. People from my family. There was my brother Daniel, shaking hands with a man I'd seen only once before. The same man who convinced my father to sell part of the company before he died. And there was another photo, Amanda, my own niece, sitting in a restaurant with the same man, smiling. My breath hitched. I clicked on a video file. My father's voice came through, faint but steady. If you're watching this, Margaret, then the truth is finally out. I was betrayed from within. The business wasn't sold, it was stolen. I covered my mouth. The room seemed to spin. He continued. I left clues in every account. Follow the numbers and you'll see how deep it goes. But be careful, they're still watching. Then the screen went black. For a long time I just sat there, listening to the faint hum of the computer fan. Every word he said echoed in my head like a warning and a promise. I didn't cry this time. Instead I whispered, "Don't worry, Dad. I'll finish what you started." And at that moment I knew, this wasn't just a mystery. It was a war. The next morning I woke up with one thought pounding in my mind: find the truth. I hadn't slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father's face, heard his warning. I packed a small bag, grabbed my laptop, and took the first train to Dallas again. I needed answers from the only person who might know the full story, Leonard Goldstein. When I entered his office, the air felt heavier. He looked older, wearier than before. "Margaret," he said softly, "I was hoping you wouldn't have to see that video." I leaned forward. "You knew." He sighed. "I knew enough to be afraid. Your father trusted the wrong people. The men he thought were partners, they were thieves in tailored suits. And your brother, he wasn't innocent." My chest tightened. "Daniel," I whispered. Leonard nodded. "He sold your father's shares before the deal was even finalized. Your father tried to stop it, but he was already too sick." The room went silent. It felt like the walls were closing in. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" I asked. "Because you were the only one your father still believed in," Leonard said quietly. "He didn't want to drag you into the dirt. But he left you something more than money, proof." He handed me a small envelope. Inside was another note, written in my father's rough handwriting. "If you ever doubt who you are, follow the numbers, not the names. The numbers never lie." I stared at the paper, realizing this wasn't over. It was just beginning. The train ride back to Austin felt endless. Every face in the carriage blurred past me, yet all I could think about were those words. Follow the numbers, not the names. That night I spread everything across my dining table. Old bank slips, my father's company letters, even faded receipts from the year before he died. Something was hiding in plain sight. Hours turned into dawn. My eyes burned, my hands trembled. Then I noticed a sequence. 5 identical numbers written in his notes, always beside the same date. March 18th, the day before he collapsed. I typed the digits into a public records site, then froze. They matched a property registration number, one owned by Sterling and Company Investments LLC. Under shareholders, one name stood out: Daniel Foster. My brother. I sat there silent. So it was true. He didn't just sell the company, he stole it. Grief turned to rage. But mixed with that fury was something colder, sharper: clarity. I reached for my phone and opened a new email draft to Leonard Goldstein. I found the link. "What happens if I can prove Daniel used Dad's private accounts?" His reply came within minutes. "Then you don't just have truth, Margaret. You have power." I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. For the first time I realized this story wasn't about loss anymore. It was about taking back everything they thought I couldn't fight for. The next morning I dressed carefully. Not for beauty but for armor. A pressed blazer, my late husband's watch, and the quiet strength of knowing something no one else did. I arrived at Leonard's office before sunrise. He was already waiting, a folder in his hand, his eyes sharp behind wire frames. "Margaret," he said, "if what you found is accurate, your brother committed corporate fraud. Your father's estate was manipulated." My pulse quickened. "Can we prove it?" He nodded slowly. "If we can trace the diverted funds, yes. But once this starts, there's no going back." Family or not, he'll fight. I stared at the window, sunlight cutting through the blinds. Let him, I whispered. He already took everything once. That day, Leonard introduced me to a private investigator. A quiet woman named Clara with a voice like steel and eyes that saw too much. She took copies of the documents, my father's letters, and even old photographs of Daniel. By evening, I was sitting in my apartment, watching the city lights flicker across the glass. My reflection stared back at me, older, harder, but alive in a way I hadn't been for years. I whispered to myself, "You wanted me invisible, Daniel. Let's see how invisible I can be while I tear your empire down." And for the first time, I wasn't scared of what came next. I was ready. Days turned into weeks. Clara worked quietly in the background, sending short updates through encrypted emails. Each one felt like a spark in the dark, fragments of a bigger truth coming together. "Your brother's company has 3 hidden accounts," her message read one morning. "All linked to offshore transfers. Your father's trust money was rerouted, bit by bit, for over 15 years. I stared at the email for a long time. 15 years. That meant Daniel had started stealing even before our father died. When I told Leonard, he sighed deeply. "It's worse than I thought. He covered it through fake consultancy firms. But if we expose it properly, the board will turn on him." That night, I sat by the window again, the city lights reflecting in my tea. For the first time, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a storm waiting to hit. I picked up my phone and scrolled to Daniel's number. The same one I hadn't called in years. My thumb hovered over the dial, but I didn't press it. He didn't deserve to hear my voice yet. Instead, I whispered to the night, "You built your empire with my blood, Daniel. I'm going to make sure the world sees the stains." I closed my laptop, drew the curtains, and smiled faintly. The silence didn't hurt anymore. It was the sound of control returning. Tomorrow the first move would begin. That night I couldn't sleep. The silence in the house felt heavier than ever, filled with thoughts I couldn't share with anyone. The winning ticket was still tucked beneath the floorboard, but it was burning in my mind like a secret that wanted to scream. I replayed every face from that dinner. My brother laughing, my father's careless joke about how some people just get lucky, and my mother's worried eyes that seemed to sense I was hiding something. The next morning, I walked to the small cafe near the gas station where I'd bought the ticket. The cashier, an older man with a crooked smile, looked up as I entered. "Back for another try," he teased. I almost smiled. If only he knew. I just nodded, ordered coffee, and sat by the window. Every car that passed made my heart race. What if someone found out? What if the story broke before I was ready? When I returned home, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. "This is the State Lottery Commission," a calm voice said. "Ma'am, we've been trying to reach you. There's been a delay with one of the winning verifications, and we'd like to confirm some details." My blood froze. They knew my name. I swallowed hard. "Of course," I said, trying to sound casual. "What details?" The line crackled. "Just a few routine questions. But please don't share this call with anyone yet." My fingers trembled as I hung up. It wasn't relief I felt. It was the beginning of something else. Something far more dangerous than money or secrets. The moment I hung up the phone, my heart refused to calm down. The man's voice still echoed in my ears. "Don't tell anyone yet." His tone wasn't threatening, but it carried a weight that made my stomach twist. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the floorboard, hiding my secret, wondering if my life was about to change again, or fall apart completely. For hours I couldn't move. My thoughts spun in circles. Had someone found out? Was it a scam? The possibilities clawed at me. Finally, I decided to call back. But the number was already unreachable. No voicemail, no trace, just gone. That's when I noticed a black car parked across the street. Engine running but no one getting out. I watched it through the blinds, my pulse thudding in my neck. Maybe it was nothing, but I'd stopped believing in coincidences long ago. The next day, I went to the lottery office in person, pretending to be just another curious customer. I asked about the unclaimed prize. The woman behind the counter smiled politely. "Yes, ma'am, we're still waiting for the winner to come forward." Her words froze me. That meant the caller wasn't from them. I walked back to my car, my hands shaking so hard I dropped the keys twice. If someone knew about my ticket, it wasn't the authorities, it was someone else. Someone who shouldn't. That night, a letter slid under my motel door. No address. No stamp. Just one sentence written in black ink. You're not the only one who knows. My breath caught. Suddenly, that little piece of paper under the floorboard didn't feel like a blessing anymore. Felt like a curse. I barely slept that night. Every sound outside made me flinch. A door closing, a car passing, footsteps echoing in the hallway. The letter lay on my nightstand like a ghost whispering my name. You're not the only one who knows. I couldn't get those words out of my head. Who else could possibly know? I hadn't told a soul. Unless someone had seen me at the gas station that day. The next morning, I decided to check the security cameras there. The owner, Mr. Patel, was kind but cautious. Why do you ask? He said, narrowing his eyes. I forced a shaky smile. I think someone followed me home last week. He frowned but eventually let me see the recordings. My hands trembled as we fast-forwarded through the footage. There I was buying the ticket, smiling faintly, and behind me stood a man in a dark hoodie. I never noticed him that day, but when he lifted his head toward the camera, I froze. His eyes looked straight into the lens, cold, sharp, familiar. I had seen those eyes before. My heart dropped. Mr. Patel looked at me. You okay? Why, yeah, I lied. Just tired. I left the shop feeling like the ground beneath me wasn't solid anymore. When I reached my car, there was something tucked under the windshield wiper. A folded receipt. On it, one line scrawled in black ink. Stop looking, or you'll lose more than money. The paper shook in my hands as the wind howled through the parking lot. My secret had a shadow now, and it was getting closer. I sat frozen in the driver's seat, the note trembling in my hand. The parking lot felt too quiet, like the world was holding its breath, waiting to see what I'd do next. My first instinct was to drive, to get as far away as possible, but where would I even go? The secret I carried wasn't something I could outrun. It was stitched into every heartbeat. I finally started the engine and drove aimlessly for hours. The city blurred past in streaks of color and rain. Every time a car pulled behind me for too long, my palms went slick with sweat. Paranoia had a taste, metallic, bitter, heavy on the tongue. I ended up at the old cemetery on the edge of town, the place where my husband was buried. I sat by his headstone, whispering into the cold air. I don't know what to do anymore. I thought keeping the secret would protect me, but it's only destroying me. The wind stirred, and a piece of newspaper rolled past my feet. The headline caught my eye. Local shop owner attacked outside gas station. My stomach turned cold, Mr. Patel. I read every word. Robbery gone wrong. No suspects. But I knew better. He had shown me the footage. Someone wanted to make sure no one else saw it. As I drove back to the motel, headlights flashed in my rearview mirror. The same black car. This time it didn't keep its distance. It followed me, turn after turn, light after light. My pulse raced as I pulled into the narrow alley beside the motel. I killed the engine and ducked low, barely breathing. The car slowed, its headlights washing over the walls like searching eyes. Then slowly it rolled away. For the first time I realized this wasn't just about money anymore. Whoever they were watching. And they were warning me. By morning I had packed my few belongings into a duffel bag. Sleep had become impossible, and fear was the only thing keeping me awake. Every creak of the floorboard sounded like footsteps. Every car passing outside felt like a threat. The black car hadn't returned, but that didn't calm me. The silence was worse, it meant whoever they were planning something. I decided to move. Not to another motel, but somewhere no one would think to look. I drove 3 hours north to a small coastal town where no one knew my name. I paid cash for a room in a cheap inn, the kind where no one asks questions. But paranoia travels with you. Even here, I found myself checking every window lock twice before sleeping. That night, I dreamt of my husband again. He was standing by the ocean, smiling. "You've always been stronger than you think," he said. When I reached for him, the waves swallowed his reflection. I woke up drenched in sweat. The clock read 3:17 a.m. That's when I heard it, a faint knock on the door. 3 slow taps. I held my breath. Another knock, louder this time. My heart thundered. "Who's there?" I whispered, but there was no reply. I crept to the peephole, hands trembling. Nothing. Just empty hallway. I waited a full minute before unbolting the door, slowly opening it, and froze. A single envelope lay on the floor. My name written in the same black ink as before. Inside was a photograph. It was me, standing at Mr. Patel's gas station, holding the lottery ticket. The photo was dated 2 days before I ever checked the security footage. That meant someone had been watching long before I knew I was being followed. The bookstore owner, Mrs. Alden, noticed my pale face the next morning. "You don't look well, dear," she said softly. I forced a smile, hiding the tremor in my hands. How could I tell her that someone had broken into my room, just to leave a message on the mirror? That my secret wasn't safe anymore? I spent the day pretending everything was normal. Reading, cleaning, helping her arrange the shelves, but inside I was falling apart. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I locked myself inside the room and sat by the window, watching the fog swallow the streetlights. I took out the lottery ticket again. Its edges had begun to fray, like even the paper was tired of holding the secret. I whispered, "What do they want from me?" But no answer came, only the creak of old wood and the whisper of rain. Then I saw it again. A figure standing across the street, barely visible through the fog. Motionless. Watching. My chest tightened. I closed the curtain, heart racing. I reached for my phone to call the police, but stopped. What would I even say? Someone's haunting me because I won the lottery? They'd laugh me off. Instead, I texted my brother for the first time in months. "I need to talk. Urgent." Minutes later, he replied, "Where are you?" Relief flooded me, but only for a second, because the next message came almost instantly. "We already know." My blood ran cold. The phone slipped from my hand. Whoever was behind this wasn't just following me. They had already reached the one person I thought I could trust. Outside, the fog thickened, wrapping the town in silence. And I knew then I wasn't running from strangers anymore. I was running from my own family. I didn't sleep that night. My brother's message haunted me. We already know. What did they know? Who told them? The shadows in my room seemed to move with every sound outside. I sat there until dawn, staring at the faint glow creeping through the curtains. By morning, I decided I couldn't hide anymore. I packed my bag and took the first bus out of town, heading to my old neighborhood, the place I swore I'd never return to. The air smelled of rain and memories, both heavy and bittersweet. When I reached my brother's house, he was waiting at the porch, his eyes dark and unreadable. "You should have told us," he said quietly as I approached. "About what?" I asked, though I already knew. He sighed. "The ticket. The money. You really thought we wouldn't find out." My chest tightened. "It wasn't about the money," I whispered. "It was about peace. About finally being free." He looked away. "You think you're the only one who's been struggling? You had a way to change everything. And you kept it for yourself." Before I could answer, his wife appeared at the door, holding their little girl. Her expression was colder than winter. "You can't just show up here after disappearing for months," she snapped. "People talk. They say you've gone crazy." I felt something break inside me. The people I'd loved most were now my accusers. The secret that was meant to save me had turned them into strangers. As I walked away, my brother's voice echoed behind me. "You don't deserve that money, Margaret. None of it." I turned once more, meeting his eyes. "Maybe not," I said softly. "But I earned my silence, and I'm keeping it." The wind carried my words away, but I knew they'd linger. I spent the next few nights in a cheap roadside inn, too afraid to go home and too tired to keep running. The mirror note, my brother's message, the way his wife looked at me. It all circled in my mind like a storm that refused to pass. I kept the winning ticket locked inside my bag, though it felt more like a curse than a blessing now. Every noise outside made me jump. I stopped answering unknown numbers, stopped opening the door even for room service. The fear wasn't just of being found, it was of what I might lose when I was. On the fourth night, I woke to a knock at the door. Slow, deliberate, almost gentle. My pulse thundered. I didn't move. Then a voice came, one I hadn't heard in months. "Margaret, please." "It's me. Amanda. My daughter." I hesitated, every instinct telling me to stay silent. But a mother's heart doesn't obey logic. I opened the door, and there she was, thinner, older somehow, her eyes wet and desperate. "Mom," she whispered. Why didn't you tell me? I stared at her. Because you would have looked at me differently. Like everyone else did. She shook her head. No, I wouldn't. I wanted to understand. People are saying things, Mom. Uncle David, Aunt Claire. They all think you're hiding something dangerous. I almost laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. Dangerous? I hid the truth because the truth destroys families, Amanda. You think money changes people? Try giving them power. Her tears broke me. She reached out to touch my hand, trembling. Please come home. We'll figure this out together. But I could see it. The same flicker of curiosity in her eyes that everyone else had. The kind that said she wasn't here for me. She was here for what I had. And in that moment I knew I couldn't trust her either. I sat across from Amanda in that dim, yellow-lit motel room. The rain outside had turned into a storm, thunder shaking the thin walls. She looked fragile, lost, and for a fleeting second I wanted to believe her. That she'd come because she cared. Mom, she whispered. People are saying you're paranoid. That you've lost control. I smiled faintly. Paranoid? Maybe. But paranoia keeps me alive. She frowned. Alive from what? From us. Her words cut deeper than she realized. I stood up, pacing slowly. Do you know what it feels like to give everything to people? Your time, your heart, your life. And then be thrown away like an old receipt? Amanda looked down. Dad's death broke you. You're not the same. I froze. No, Amanda. I finally became myself after he died. I just didn't realize it would make everyone else uncomfortable. She started to cry again. Then what do you want from us? I don't want anything, I said softly. That's the point. For the first time, I don't owe anyone a damn thing. There was silence, only the sound of rain tapping against the glass. Then her phone buzzed. She looked at it quickly, too quickly. I caught the reflection of the screen in the mirror. A message from Chad. Did she take the bait yet? My heart turned to stone. My own daughter sent by him. Not to make peace. To make sure I was still broken. I walked toward the door, my voice steady. Tell Chad, I said. He should have known better than to play games with a woman who's got nothing left to lose. Amanda gasped, reaching out, but I stepped into the storm without looking back. The thunder roared behind me like applause. This wasn't fear anymore. It was freedom. The storm lasted through the night. I walked for what felt like hours until my legs gave up near a gas station on the highway. The city lights shimmered faintly behind me, fading into mist. I bought a cup of burnt coffee, sat on a cold bench, and stared at the rain-streaked window. For the first time I felt empty. But it wasn't the same emptiness that haunted me before. This one was quiet, clean, almost peaceful. By morning I had made my decision. I went to the bank, withdrew half of what was left in the hidden account, and bought a single black notebook. On the first page I wrote, For Amanda, when she's ready to listen. It wasn't forgiveness. It was truth. The kind that doesn't need permission to exist. Over the next week I transferred ownership of the apartment building. Not to Amanda, not to Chad, but to a trust in the name of Margaret Louise Foundation. Its purpose? To provide housing and financial aid for single mothers and widows, women like me, who had been forgotten by the ones they raised. Every signature, every stamp on that document felt like a piece of my pain turning into purpose. 2 days later, I mailed the notebook to Amanda's workplace. No return address. Inside, I wrote about the betrayal, the inheritance, the silence, everything. I didn't want her pity. I wanted her to see me, the real me. Then I packed my suitcase again. Not out of exile this time, but choice. I boarded a bus heading west, toward the ocean. I hadn't seen it in decades, but I remembered how my husband once promised we'd retire by the sea. Maybe now, finally, I could keep that promise just for myself. As the bus rolled on, the sunrise broke through the clouds. I closed my eyes and smiled. The past no longer held me hostage. I was free. The sea wind carried a calm I hadn't felt in years. Waves rolled toward the shore like the rhythm of forgiveness itself. Slow, steady, certain. I stood there, shoes in hand, feeling the cold sand under my feet. For once, the silence wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. I thought about Amanda again. Maybe one day she'd find the courage to open that notebook and see the truth. Not as an accusation, but as a map. A map back to the woman who once tucked her in at night, who loved her enough to let go. I wasn't bitter anymore. Life had taken me apart, but it had also pieced me together in a new way. Stronger, softer, wiser. A little girl ran past me, laughing as the tide chased her heels. Her mother called after her with the same kind of voice I once had, filled with love, worry, and endless patience. I smiled. The cycle goes on, I thought. We all make mistakes. We all learn. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I whispered a quiet thank you, to the sea, to the pain, to the woman I used to be. Because this wasn't just my ending. It was my beginning. And if you're listening to this, maybe it's yours too. If my story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Every story has a lesson. Maybe yours is next. Red Heart.